Hello everyone, Steve Gage here, NASM certified personal trainer and co-owner of Engage Fitness. Today we're going to go over dumbbell do's and don'ts of back exercises. So we're going to talk about how to do these movements, what the correct form and posture is, and things to look out for and be aware of to making sure we're hitting the right areas we're trying to work out. So the back is composed of the lats, rhomboids, traps, all that stuff we kind of forget about because it's in the back. We don't really look at it in the mirror, so we really kind of forget about it. But they're such a crucial part of how the body moves and keeping the function of the body and moving properly. So you have the lats, which are located on the side, pretty much from your armpit down to your side, as well as attached to your spinal cord in the back. And you have your traps, which are, a lot of people think is just here, but you also have middle traps, parts in the middle, and the lower traps towards the lower end of that triangle. And you also have rhomboids and teres major, which are responsible for a lot of shoulder blade movement up, down, squeezing the shoulder blades together. That's all those muscles that are activated. And those are very crucial in any kind of back movement. There's a lot of shoulder blade activation first, because then you'll feel you'll get a lot more lat activation. So for example, if we're doing our first movement, which is a bent over dumbbell row. So with this, we're hinging at the hips. We don't want to round forward like so, because then we feel that lower back pressure, which we want to avoid. So we're hinging right at the hips, just like if you've ever seen those water birds that dip into that glass of water just like a pendulum, just like that, except you're hinging from the hips. You're just slightly bending at the knees, hinging down, letting the arms relax, palms are facing in. And the first part of this movement is we want to squeeze those shoulder blades, because that's going to help us activate the lats first. So squeeze the shoulder blades, and then we're driving the elbows backwards. Elbows is part of how this movement works, because if we just use the arms, it becomes a giant bicep curl. Just imagine as you're doing this, the hands are just there, literally just to hold the weight. They're not pulling, they're not curling, they're just there to hold the weight. And all the motion is coming from the elbows. You're driving those elbows back and getting that chest up just slightly. Just slightly chest raise, driving those elbows back, and you'll feel it. If you feel at the top of the motion, you're feeling it in your biceps, try relaxing the hands and driving with just the elbows. And you'll get a lot more lat activation. And then along with squeezing those shoulder blades, driving those elbows back. And then relax, squeezing the shoulder blades, driving back. Almost imagine if you have somebody with strings attached to your elbows and they're pulling you from your elbows. Again, just the hands are there, just literally just holding those dumbbells or a cable or whatever you're using. And you're squeezing shoulder blades, driving the elbows back, and keep them at your side. We don't want them way out here, because then it becomes almost like a chicken wing and a different kind of row. We want to keep those elbows close to the sides and close to the waist. Keeping them close to the waist helps you activate those lats too, because if we try to bring them high, it becomes just a bicep curl, and then we hit a lot of the muscles in the back we're trying to avoid. We're trying to hit the side, those lats on the side. So keeping those elbows close to your body and by your waist is going to help you activate those lats a lot more. And again, just starting with that shoulder blade squeeze, pinning them back, driving those elbows back. Nice and controlled. And then relax. And with this shape, if you find you're in that hinge bent over shape and you're starting to feel that lower back pressure, just simply raise the angle a little bit. Because the lower you are, the lower you're going to hit on those lats. So if you're standing at a slight angle, you're going to feel a lot more towards the top. And the more you bend over, the lower you get on those lats all the way down to your waist. So next exercise we're going to do, I'm going to show you some tips with this. We're going to do the single arm row. So just like we did, we're just going to do one arm at a time. And this is one of those great exercises to throw into the routine, do some isolation work once in a while to find out which side is stronger, weaker, tighter, looser, and find which one needs more TLC. So again, we're getting into that same shape, hinging at the hips. We're not rounding forward or overarching on the lower back. We want that tight core, hips go back, bending at the knees, just getting as close to 90 degrees from the legs and the torso as we can. And again, if you feel you get to that point and there's that lower back pressure, just simply raise that angle just a little bit, just to where there's no lower back pain. Because we got to make sure that core is engaged as well. So we're starting just one hand, again, letting it relax, slack really stretching out the back, and then we're starting with that shoulder blade squeeze, and then driving that elbow to the side. Letting it relax, shoulder blade, almost like a two-part motion where you're starting from the shoulder blade and then driving the elbow back. And then eventually once you get that two-part motion down a little more fluidly, it'll be one fluid motion. Because you'll find even though that shoulder blade activation doesn't get you very far, it gets you a lot farther than you think. By just using that small muscle group, it activates the lats, which are meant to handle a lot more weight than your biceps. And it's gonna help you, again, strengthen those muscles in the back, which is super crucial for posture and shoulder stability. So even if you want to just kind of get used to that shoulder blade activation, you can hang either with the single or the double row. So you're standing here and we're just going to work on that shoulder blade activation. So just hang just to the point, again, where you feel you can stay in that stable, comfortable shape, and just work on squeezing those shoulder blades. So just simple, just pretend like you've got a pencil in the back and you're trying to really squish that pencil, and just letting the arms hang relaxed. All the motion should be coming from the shoulder blades. So we're just here, squeezing those shoulder blades together. This is great for any back move, because you want to start always with the shoulder blade squeeze and then moving the arms for any kind of back motion. For example, since we've done some pull row techniques already, let's do some pull up and pull down methods. So I'm going to show you from the back as if I'm sitting on a pull down machine. So I'm in my pull down position. So a lot of people just want to use the arms to pull down the weight. You want to use those lats. So again, starting with that shoulder blade squeeze, so squeezing them together, and look how much motion I get just from that one movement. Just squeezing those shoulder blades, and you'll feel. And what that does too is it squeezing those shoulder blades is it gets that shoulder in a more stable position. Because if they're out here just kind of hanging and you don't retract and squeeze those shoulder blades, your shoulder's in that not stable position, and you try to move and you either have limited movement or it's grinding against the surfaces that it's not supposed to. So again, getting in that pull up or pull down position, squeezing those shoulder blades first, and then driving the elbows to the sides. And that's really going to use those lats, which is what is meant to do when we're doing any kind of pull up or pull down motion. So even if you want to just do that motion without any weight, either sitting, kneeling, or standing, just getting used to that position where you're in the air, your hands are in the air, and starting just that shoulder blade squeeze, and then letting it relax. Shoulder blade squeeze, and then back. And then once you get more comfortable with that, shoulder blade squeeze, and then driving those elbows down, really feeling at the bottom, you'll feel those lats turn on as you get those elbows to the side. And you'll notice the difference too. If you try that motion without squeezing the shoulder blades and just kind of winging it, you don't really feel as much. You feel maybe a little bit in the biceps, a little bit because you're using the arms to pull down. But if you get those shoulder blades squeezed together and drive the elbows down, you feel a lot more along the sides underneath where that arm comes. And we're trying to keep the arms as close to the shoulder as we can. We don't want them way out here or way back here. We want them in line, elbows in line with that shoulder, really getting that lat activation on the side. And again, as always, starting with that shoulder blade squeeze, driving the elbows down, getting a slight, raising the chest up slightly, but not to the point where it's so far back we feel that lower back pressure. Kind of like that sweet spot. We're going to find that in the middle where the chest comes up a little bit, and then back down. Again, with back movements, we're making sure we're engaging those shoulder blades first, because if you're not engaging those shoulder blades, the shoulder's in that rolled forward position because the weight's pulling us this way. So if we try to move, the shoulder's not rolling in that socket naturally, like it's supposed to. It's grinding against that shoulder blade girdle that's rolling forward, so that shoulder socket is just grinding against that surface. So if we squeeze those shoulder blades, it resets that shoulder where it's supposed to, and that shoulder joint can move freely and allow us to get that complete row. So again, just shoulder blade squeeze, drive the elbows back. Shoulder blade squeezed, drive the elbows back. And again, we can get just a slight raising the chest a little bit, but not to the point where it's overly doing it where we feel that lower back pressure. So we're just squeezing shoulder blades, elbows tight by the sides, because you'll notice too is if you come out to the side, you feel it more towards the top and upper region of your back. You want to keep it elbows tight to the sides because that'll activate those lats. And then the last few exercises, we're going to target a lot of those muscles we spoke about earlier, those rhomboids, those middle traps, all those muscles that are responsible for that shoulder blade movement and keeping our posture upright and keeping us out of that hunched over, curved forward position, which is a lot of what we're seeing now because a lot of us are on the phone a lot more, in front of the TV because we're working from home, a lot more screen time. So working these muscles and getting them stronger is going to help bring up your posture, neutral spine, and bring that head from leaning forward. So with this exercise, we're going to do again, either you can do these leaning over, hinging at the hips, or even hanging over a bench if you have access to one. So again, we're hinging at the hips, bending at the knees, finding that position where we can keep that core engagement and neutral spine. So instead of having the palms facing in, like we did with the bent over dumbbell row, we're going to have the palms facing backwards behind us. And a lot of this motion is coming from the shoulder joint, but again, we're starting with squeezing those shoulder blades, and now we're going to drive the elbows out. Trying to keep them in line with the shoulder, maybe a little lower, but we don't want them way up here, because then the shoulders have a tendency to roll forward. So we're keeping them here. Start with that shoulder blade squeeze, and then driving the elbows, again, as far back as we can, almost as if we're trying to touch those elbows together behind us. Obviously, it's not going to happen. So we're starting here, keeping that core engaged, flat back, making sure there's no lower back stress. And we're just driving the elbows back, slight chest raise. Again, always starting with that shoulder blade squeeze, and then driving the elbows back. And really trying to use the elbows to pull the weight back. We're not using the hands, the arms. They're just there to hold the weight. All the motion's coming from those elbows. Driving the elbows back, squeezing those shoulder blades. And if at any point, again, you're not feeling it in the area you think you should, just hold at the top of that position and feel what muscles are keeping that position stable and that are getting activated. Because you feel it more in your biceps, try to relax it again and making sure those shoulder blades are squeezed. So that's going to automatically take your arms out of the equation. Because it's very difficult if you try to, say if we're doing that row again, squeezing the shoulder blades and then trying to do this, you automatically know you're using your arms. But if you just let the shoulder blades relax, it's a lot easier to use the arms in that shape without squeezing those shoulder blades. So again, just any back movement you're doing, whether it be a row, pull down, upright row, make sure to engage those shoulder blades first. Because again, if you're leaning forward or upwards at this position, your shoulder is not in that natural position and it's a little slightly rolled forward. But as soon as you get those shoulder blades squeezed together, it resets that shoulder into that socket where it's supposed to be, and you can move a lot more freely and drive with the elbows and activate those lats. And again, just making sure you get that shoulder blade activation first. So if you need to kind of work on that position, what you can do is either hang the dumbbells either hanging in that hinge shape we've talked about, or even just hanging from a pull-up bar or a pull-down machine. Just letting your hands holding the bar or surface and just squeezing the shoulder blades together. Just working on that small movement, and you'll notice how much movement you actually get just from squeezing those shoulder blades. Letting them relax all the way forward, and then squeezing and relaxing. Squeezing and relaxing. And one more final tip for any kind of back movement is if you're continually not feeling the lat activation or the upper back activation that you want, try holding the dumbbells differently. So it's a small change, but for me it made a huge difference, is not using your thumb. Almost grabbing the dumbbells in like a hook fashion, so you're using your first 4 fingers to just grab around that dumbbell, holding it more like a hook as opposed to using your thumb. For some reason, when you use your thumb, it activates a lot more arm than lat. So try just having your thumb either resting on the dumbbell or completely off. Just kind of resting there and just using those first 4 fingers and then driving those elbows back. Again, starting with that shoulder blade squeeze. And again, just switching the grip, switching from having the thumb on the dumbbell versus off. Just start light, see if you can notice a difference. But I'm pretty sure you're going to notice. Because using that hook grip kind of teaches your body how to use more lat activation than just doing a bicep curl. So again, we've gone over engaging those shoulder blades is vital for any kind of back movement, making sure we're targeting those big power muscles, the lats. Because you'll find you can lift a ton more weight using your lats than your biceps. And if not, then you need to do a little more back work because we got to make sure we're balanced. Well, thank you for tuning in, guys. Hopefully these tips and suggestions were helpful. Any further questions, reach out to Sarah and I, and we're happy to fill you guys in on any kind of info that you're looking for. Thanks again for tuning in. Be safe, be kind, and choose to be well. Take care, guys.